A crowning achievement, the history of Penn football is brought to you by Primetime Publications, alongside the Regional Radio Sports Network. Indiana Football Digest, in conjunction with the Penn Harris-Madison School Corporation and the Penn Harris-Madison Education Foundation.
Hey, this is Paul Condry of the Indiana Football Digest, president and founder of the Regional Radio Sports Network. Over the course of the next hour and some change, you are in for a treat as we take you back in time with one of the most successful high school sports programs in the history of Indiana high school sports. Welcome to a crowning achievement, the history of Penn football.
It all began in 1958. As you would expect with any new school and athletic program, there were going to be growing pains. The Penn administration, led by trustee Vernon J. Freed, would tap Dale O'Connell as the school's first head football coach. O'Connell, a product of New Hampshire, would guide the Kingsmen to a respectable 32-21-4 record over the course of the first 5 seasons. Fall of 1964, a promising young coach by the name of Ron Meyer would take over the helm of the Kingsmen. This hard-nosed, intense young coach would guide the black and gold to a 5-4-1 regular season mark. Meyer eventually would make his mark as a collegiate head coach at Southern Methodist University and in the National Football League with the New England Patriots and the Indianapolis Colts. After Meyer moved on to the college ranks, another former collegian would step to the forefront. His name, Bob Ward. This former Notre Dame football player would guide the Kingsmen from 1965 to 1969. The likable Ward would record a 36-2 mark during his time at Penn. Ironically, Ward's son Mark would go on to star at Penn under future Hall of Fame coach Chris Geesman. In 1970, former Bowling Green State University standout Roger Reynolds moved into the Kingsmen's top spot. It was a rough ride for the former Ohio native, and the Kingsmen would go on to record a 3-26-1 record. One of the most important dynamics in Penn history unfolded off the gridiron. In 1971, a visionary, a demanding man by the name of Dr. Dean Spiker moved into the superintendent's office. Spiker preached excellence in everything that was going on in the fast-growing school corporation. One of Spiker's priorities was to hire a football coach. Chris Geesman, former Hanover College Hall of Famer, would leave his home state of Ohio and make his mark on Penn Harris-Madison community forever. Christopher Sterling Geesman graduated from Delaware Willis, Ohio in 1957 and Hanover College in 1961. Gees, as he is known to many, started his coaching career under Hall of Famer Bill Siderwitz at Rensselaer Central High School from 1962 to 1967. After 5 seasons with the Bombers, he moved back to Ohio and became the head coach in Kenton, Ohio. In 4 years at the helm of the Wildcats, he accumulated a respectable 29, 18, and 3 record. In 1973, one phone call would change the course of history, and the fortunes of the Penn Harris Madison community was never the same.
I was at Kenton High, and we were in the bottom third of our league, the Western Buckeye League, in enrollment. We'd had a 9-1 season, and we worked like heck, and we'd be like 7-2-1. There's always somebody just had more talent than us, and I vowed that if I ever took another job, it'd be somewhere where you could win not only league championships, but contend for state championships. So I had in mind what I wanted, and then my best friend Tom Lansettle left to go to Miami of Ohio, and then he ended up down to NC State. And socially, we did everything together, and with his girlfriend, later his wife, and my wife, we did, and he'd just taken the head job at Mansfield Malabar, and then prior to going down to Miami. But anyway, he'd left, and Kenton was kind of a small town, and I was kind of, I figured this would be a good time to look around. And anyway, just that day I had a phone call down there. It was from Lola Whitworth.
Yeah.
Who was that? So anyway, I called it. I knew it was in northern Indiana. Asked for Miss Whitworth, and she says, yeah, I'm calling for Phil Lambert. He wanted to talk to you. I said, oh yeah? She says, we want to know if you're interested in coming over here and being a football coach. I said, yes, I am. What's the name of the school?
Well, I arrived in late July of 1971, and Penn was what I would consider an underdeveloped gem, and the success that Penn High School had was primarily around their basketball program. They had been very, very successful. And some of the other sports had some kinds of success. Wrestling was reasonably successful. Many of the programs in the school system, what I have come to call a culture of mediocrity. It wasn't that they had any kind of a strategic plan for developing programs. There was no strategic plan for selecting coaches that could develop the program, and there was no plan for mentoring coaches. There was no system in place to be able to have a long-standing staff in place. But most of the success, as I said, was in the basketball arena. In the time that I was there, the football program had little to no success. Phil and I decided that we needed to put a different focus on the football program.
I knew I was ready to look, and when I went over, as Dean said, first of all, I thought maybe I already had a better job at Kent. I mean, we got things kind of established the way we wanted, and had a bunch of players come back, all this, and I remember going up, and the old equipment room was above the swimming pool. It was real humid. I picked up a pair of practice pants and kind of straightened them out, and they ripped right down the middle. Stuff hadn't been washed and everything. And I remember talking to Dr. Spire. I said, so first of all, I don't think I'm interested in the job as it is right now. I said, I'm not trying to hold you up. I'm not trying to ask for more things, but I just said right now I don't think I'm very much interested. And anyway, he talked, and the thing he was talking about, looked down the road, he had his hand on his desk, and this is where we are now, but this is where we're going to be. And he's saying, I'm sitting there staring at his hand up his face. I got this job. But there was three things that really attracted me. The first was him. I mean, I knew there was going to be some pressure with the job. I mean, he remembers it a little different than I thought, but I'll just say the general rule was he wanted some results. He was going to give you what you had to have within reason, and he'd listen to you, and if you can justify things, he'd try to get it for you. But he had high expectations, and he wanted results. He wanted to be at least 500 by the third year. I mean, and which seems modest enough. I thought it was very fair, but when you looked at the film from the previous year, you thought that might be a pipe dream, but it wasn't. The third year we're undefeated. So, but it was great. So he had high expectations, but I like that. I'd like a place where they want you to win and they expect you to win. They give you what you have to win, but man, you better produce. I just like working in that kind of atmosphere. I don't like the fact where, you know, if you don't get any complaints from the kids or parents, you can coach here forever. I don't care if I didn't want that. I wanted somebody that knew what it took to win and wanted to win. So, I mean, I kind of could thrive in that kind of environment. I like that a lot. So Dr. Spiker was the number one selling point about this job. He was a visionary, and I was planning on having a family, and he understood one thing. Obviously, I wanted my kids to have the best education they could possibly have. And he understood that for everybody's kids. But also, it was important to me that my kids be in a good football program. I wanted both. Oh, he understood that, and his goal was, he always said, if we're going to offer any program at Penn High School, it's going to be the best it can possibly be. And we want to be number one in everything.
The first game that I saw Penn play was against Mishawaka, and I was about 10 minutes late because I didn't understand that there was no parking at Mishawaka, and they had to park 2 or 3 blocks away. So by the time I got there, Penn had scored their maybe 1 or 2 of their 6 points, touchdowns, during the school year. They had run a play back, a kickoff back against Mishawaka. The score ended up being 60 or 66-6. So I got to see Mishawaka score a lot of points. So anyway, there were a number of issues with the football program, and there was no program. It was treated like any other sport. The coach would show up and there wasn't much preparation. There was no strategic player development. Phil Lambert and I decided that we had to go a different direction. So at the time, I had just come off being on the board at Ball State University. And Dave McLean was a friend and somebody that I trusted very much. So I called Dave and I said, give me 5 names in the Midwest of coaches that we ought to talk to if we really want to build a program. Geesman was one of the names. He told me about this country boy from Rensselaer that was over in Kenton, Ohio. And so we contacted, and I think Phil made the contacts as I recall. We contacted these 5 candidates, and all 5 of them decided they wanted to talk to us. So we talked to all 5 of them, and as we went through the process, it filtered down that in Lambert and my way of thinking that Chris Geesman offered us the greatest hope to take the program in a different direction. As you would expect, he had a lot of questions, and I'm not so sure that he thought there was much of a future at Penn High School in terms of developing a football program. I could see that the school system was going to develop very differently than what it was for a lot of different reasons. But anyway, what we were impressed with is one, he taught English, and he appeared to be intellectual and an academic. And at any rate, we thought, well, he would be a great fit to teach English. I think he did that 1 year, and then he morphed himself back into phys ed. And in fact, I think he negotiated his way out that he only taught about 2 classes out of the full school day. And so, we made the offer to him. And what we told all the candidates was that they could bring 1 or 2 staff members with them into the leadership role with building a program. We didn't know that we were going to get Charlie Lori. Chris brought Charlie Lori with him, and obviously that changed the culture of Penn football from day one when they ran out on the field, and Charlie started beating players' heads with their helmets on. If they were smart, they kept their helmets on. And so that created a lot of enthusiasm and everything else. In previous seasons, we'd have more band parents there than we would football fans to see a game because we had not had success. Another interesting point is there was a gal by the name of Joy Chamberlain. Her husband was a cardiologist here in town, Don, and Joy used to come up in the stands and kind of beat me up at every game. She'd say, "When are you going to hire a football coach that can win a game?" I said, "Joy, be patient." I said, "We kind of have to let this process play its way through," and I said, "I will assure you that we will hire a football coach that will be successful." Well, when we decided to not for a contract for coaching to the football coach prior to Chris being here, we had that hearing out at Grissom Middle School, and we had a bunch of parents show up telling us how wonderful the football coach was and how inconsiderate we were that the superintendent and the high school principal were recommending to the board to go a different direction. We got through that process as you usually do, and then we offered the job to Chris, and the rest is pretty much history.
Chris Geesman's career numbers are mind-boggling when it's all said and done. 5 state championships, 3 state runners-up, 13 sectional crowns, 9 regional championships, 22 conference titles, and an overall 309-49 record at Penn High. Chris finished his career with an eye-popping record of 339 wins and only 66 losses, which ranks him number 4 all-time in Indiana high school football history. When you talk to Gees, he'll be the first person to tell you it's about the coaches and the student athletes. When you talk to Coach Geesman's former players, they will be the first to tell you it's all about the coaches, the team, the culture. When it's all said and done, it's about the Penn way.
Well, when I arrived at Penn High School, based on the data that I analyzed from both the academic side and the athletic side and some of those, some programs had what I would call a culture of mediocrity. And so what we wanted to do was to build those programs. The fine arts programs were very solid. Lamar Holloway in terms of the choirs and the work that was being done with the band, and Keith Rudolph was very solid. But a number of our programs fit that culture of mediocrity label. So basically, what I told the folks is that I don't even know if I labeled it as the Penn way, but I said we're going to have high expectations. We're going to have a growth mindset. In other words, we're going to be continuously improving. I said that we're going to select the best people to lead our programs. We're going to support those people in terms of their development, and we're going to make sure that any student that we put into any kind of academic situation or into any kind of competition will not be embarrassed. So I think the Penn way kind of grew out of high expectations. I think if there is a label, that would be high expectations. And we expect you to develop a program, and we expect the results to reflect all of the work of the participants and the teachers and the coaches related to that.
Well, there was a commitment to excellence. When Dr. Spiker was the superintendent, of course, when I became a teacher, in fact, he was my first year as a student teacher, he was the new superintendent. So he was always a great role model to me. In fact, I told people as a young teacher that I wanted to go into administration and make a difference like Dr. Spiker. And so he had a tremendous impact on me and gave me many, many opportunities as a teacher, as I became a teacher leader in an individually guided education program. And as I had opportunities working in many curriculum areas, lots of different subject areas, evaluation programs, as well as student achievement kinds of programs. So he was a tremendous role model. And then I look out there at Chris Geesman, and I saw that he took a program that was 5-5 made it 5-5 the first year, coming off a 3-27 record the previous 3 years. And I knew that here was somebody special. I knew that Dr. Spiker was special, and so I watched how Dr. Spiker acquired talent and developed talent. So as role models, Dr. Spiker's always been special to me. Great mentor, longtime friend, and a fabulous administrator. I look at Coach Geesman, the same kind of person. They were very, very much alike. Both of them wanted to excel. They wanted to achieve excellence. They knew they had to do it by creating excellence and developing other people. They couldn't do it alone. So Coach Geesman had a tremendous impact, not only on football, but on other classroom teachers as well as all of the other sports, because he was winning, and he was winning big.
It's special. It's not for everybody either. I mean, I think it's first and foremost doing things right, whether on the field or off the field. There is no switch that you can say, okay, I'm going to be doing the right thing now and I'm not going to do the right thing later. I think that's really important. I think what's special about the Penn way is working hard makes you part of the team. It doesn't make you special. I think a lot of people think, if you work hard, you're special. At Penn, if you work hard, you're just another one of the guys, which I think is awesome. I mean, everybody's bought in. And like I'm sure everybody said, it's family. I mean, any player on the team now or the team, 20 years ago, can come to any coach with any problem, and the coach has their back. I mean, they'll help them out with anything. And I think just the tradition's very special too. A lot of guys I'm sure you've talked to, you get the goosebumps talking about, Penn football. And I'm lucky enough to be a part of it still, which I'm very thankful for. But I get together with my high school buddies, and first thing we talk about is Penn football. Anything else, you could have a kid, married, all this stuff, it's Penn football first. Get that out of the way, and then we can move to other stuff.
I think the Penn way has a few aspects. I think it's all about the passion. Passion for your school, and passion for your coaches, passion for your teammates. Really, when you go out there on a Friday night, you're playing for your school, but you execute and you fight every single play for your teammates. Go out there because you know they've worked hard, they're doing their job, and you want to do yours. Another thing is focus. You focus on doing the right thing, focus on execution, both on the field and off the field. You really got to make sure that you're there for your teammates, that you're putting in the time, you're putting in the effort in the off season as well as during practice, so you know that when you're out there on a Friday night, you're going into battle for each one of your teammates to go out and win that game.
Well, I think the first and foremost thing that I felt with the Penn way was family, because I'm an outsider coming in, and the way that I was received, welcomed, and made to feel a part of something special in the program. Now, I had a little bit of an advantage in the fact that I knew Geesman from years past when we used to work at the Notre Dame football camps together. So we kind of had a relationship when I was still out in Illinois, and I'd come in the summer times. So I started to hear stories and understand about what his goals were, what they were trying to do, but then to come in and be welcomed in and feel like I was a part of it right from the get-go. And then you're in there and you feel comfortable, and you feel like, okay, when it's your turn, you can speak up, and part of the camaraderie you see, they're bringing you into that. That's probably the first and foremost thing that I felt, and then the second thing is just the expectation. I mean, there's an expectation from when you're basically born into the Penn community, and football is a part of the family's life. And you watch the younger kids in the junior highs grow up the Penn way in the camps, and then the high school and the freshmen in the Penn way. And everybody knew how to do things. How you walked, how you talked, how you went through a drill, how you concentrated, how you accepted your role on the team, whether you were a starter or whether you were a second stringer or even a third stringer, whether you were a special teamer or not. So everybody kind of knew what to expect. I mean, there didn't have to be a whole lot of talk about it. It was a culture that was built in existence when I got there.
The Penn way to me, it's the never die attitude. That's how I felt as a player, that you weren't, no matter what, you were not going to ever stop. And it wouldn't matter if you were up, if you were down, if it was a big game, if it wasn't a big game, but you were never going to stop that never die attitude. And I feel like some of that, a lot of that's carried over in my life. I mean, in life, you're going to hit ups and downs. You can't just quit. You can't just roll over. You got to keep fighting back. You got to keep coming back from anything that would cause you turmoil in your life, whether it was being a student in the classroom, or I moved on after I left in high school. I still coach now up in Michigan at Edwardsburg, and I hope to instill that in the players that I coach now in Edwardsburg, that we're not going to be the biggest all the time. You're not going to be the best, but we're not going to ever quit. We're going to keep coming back. You're going to never, it's that never die attitude. You're just, no matter what, you're just going to keep going. You're going to keep trying. You're going to keep doing. And you're not going to ever accept defeat as an option.
Well, I tell you what, originally I moved to the area in the 5th grade. So I came actually from Benton Harbor, Michigan. Okay, a little rough. Then I moved to South Bend, and my 5th grade year moved out to the Penn schools, and didn't know a lot. Matt Geesman, met the same class as I. We were kind of competitors. He was bittersweet. I was Elsie Rogers. So our first meeting amongst each other was in a basketball game. And it was our 6th grade year, and believe it or not, we both got thrown out of the game. We go up for a rebound, and we get tangled up. He comes up all, huff and puff, and I did the same thing. And before you know it, we're both thrown out of the game. So we knew we had it at that point. So then, we go to school together at Schmucker, and then I was just, I was surrounded around football, being good friends with Matt ever since. And I'd be over Coach's house all the time, hanging out with Matt, and just the dedication that this coaching staff throughout the years has put together is just unbelievable. A lot of the haters in the area that aren't Penn fans will say, what makes Penn, sure, they have the numbers. Yeah, absolutely, they have the numbers, which is an absolute bonus. But you have to have the dedication of the coaching staff. I mean, these guys don't do it for the money. I mean, there's no question about it. They would probably, it'd be less than a penny an hour if you divided it out. And that's the Penn way. I mean, that's, the kids are not the fastest, they're not the most talented by any means, but they put the work in. And, that whether that's the weight room, the speed and conditioning, whatever it is, they're there to do it. And, to me, that's the Penn way. I mean, they just, they work their tail off. We're always going against bigger, faster, stronger teams. But the coaches know the opposing play before they typically even run it. I mean, and the kids study the film. The coaches just do a tremendous job.
I grew up in the farming community, the Madison Township farming community, south side of the district. And so the Penn way and the farming way kind of goes hand in hand a little bit. You're looking out for the person next to you as much or more as yourself. So it's just a team mentality. And I think that's kind of the selfishness embodies the Penn way. That would be the way I would describe it.
Oh gosh, I mean, you're right with Dr. Spiker and Chris Geesman. They laid the foundation. There's no doubt about that. And I think the Penn way is being the best you can be in everything. That's sports, whatever it may be at the school. And always trying to do your best and always give it your best effort, 100% and nothing less. And if you gave your best effort, then you let the chips fall where they may. And that's what was established. You always work hard, you play hard, you do the fundamentals, you have a good time, you hustle, and you take it from there. And that's the Penn way. And I think the Penn way is also family. It was a way to bring the whole community together. And players are very close. It's just like a tight-knit family. They support each other. They work hard together. They play together. They look at everything the same way. They eat together. They remain friends for life. I mean, it is truly a family atmosphere with the coaches, the players, the administration, the teachers, the parents, the community. It just all comes together, and that's the Penn way, just a whole cohesive unit.
Well, it's been a privilege to build on the great success that Penn Harris Madison has had. And of course, when I look at the things we're trying to do and learn from Dr. Spiker as well as Coach Geesman, excellence. So we have a vision of excellence, and that will be in every single area. That's in school safety, so that we have physical and psychological safety so that the students and teachers can self-actualize and achieve at their highest possible level. We focus on continuous academic achievement. We focus on a triangle of success that connects the students, teachers, and the parents. And then we have great involvement. We focus on relevant and focused professional development to keep everybody growing from the beginning of their careers right through the end. And we make sure that we value and celebrate diversity. We want everybody to feel valued and significant in Penn Harris Madison School Corporation. And then, of course, customer service. We want to make sure that we're great partners with our community, our parents, internal and external customers. And then as we are marketing positive images and creating positive public relations, that's based on significant positive results.
I think, again, for me, it's a unique perspective because that's the only way I ever knew. So it actually took me years further once I was out of the Penn way to realize there were other ways. And I played football in college. Kids from all over the country convened to a whole new program, a whole new staff. You're in college, so higher expectations of how people prepare, and you do see some people have a similar mentality instilled, but most don't. A lot of kids in high school are talented or bigger or stronger, and they can kind of make it a certain length of time before they hit that wall of competition. So for me, the Penn way growing up was an old adage. He would always say, if you don't leave your fundamentals, you never have to go back to them. And a lot of what I do day to day in my personal and professional life is about that. And what that means to me is discipline. You know there's a right way, you learn it, you practice it every day, and then you perform it every day. And professionally, it's pretty clear how that translates. I mean, every day, as a professional, as a husband, as a dad, it all comes together in the same way. I mean, you show up and you be present in your relationships with your peers, your friends, your family, your colleagues, your customers, your clients. And I see that in myself and my brother, but I see that in all my best friends too. I mean, they're all upstanding citizens, people that you want as neighbors, people sit next to you in the pew, you know, people that you count on at work, and that's the Penn way, and that never leaves you once it's there.
I would probably say the Penn way is doing things the right way, the way that you're told, the way you're expected to do them, and there's, you know, when you're playing for Wagner, you did it his way, you stepped his way, or it was no way, it's his way, or that was the only way. And I think if you were going to be a player, I think you had to accept that, and that's what you had to do. Exactly what they said. You know, we had some guys who went to play college, small college ball, but we also had a bunch of 5A guys that didn't play any ball, but you know what, could get after you and made a difference. So I mean, but I think the coaches knew if they were going to win with those kind of kids, and they had to convince them to, you know, it had to be done one way and one way only.
You know, Penn Way is, everybody says it, but it's a brotherhood. It's tradition. It's that long black line, and it started back in 74, 75. And Coach Geesman, Coach Spiker had a vision. They put it together, and it's just everybody out there doing something for each other, no matter how good the athlete is, no matter how bad the athlete is. You know, I wasn't an all-state kid. I was your typical Penn kid to put his butt in the weight room and lifted weights and just played hard and came out and played for the guy next to me, played for, you know, the guy on the defensive side, because I knew they were going to get their job done. They knew I was going to get my job done, and you know, it's a brother. I'll give you a great example. The guys that I played with, they'll do anything for us. My family knows that. I'm 2 miles down the street. My car breaks down. I've got both my boys, my daughter, and I think my niece was with us at the time, or with them at the time. So my in-laws are 3 miles away. My mom and dad 5 miles away. So who do they call? Corporal Kent Wickham. Hey Kent, can you give us a ride? He's there in a heartbeat. So they know. I mean, they know that anything that anybody needs, they're going to look at that. And you always look back. You look back and bounce, you know, things off those guys. You can tell those guys anything. One of my best friends, I was the best man in. I mean, same team. I mean, it's a brotherhood of where you come together, play together, and you're in it together, no matter what.
There's a lot of things, adjectives you could use to describe the Penn way, but doing things the right way, doing things with a high standard, working hard, not accepting defeat, not accepting being tired, and execution. I mean, they did hold us to a high standard, whether it was in the classroom or on the field. If you didn't hold that standard, you weren't doing things the Penn way. I mean, that was kind of the way it was, and you knew it from the beginning. It's what you expected, and you followed it, or you didn't do it.
Well, yeah, that's the whole point, that it means the same thing every year. It's a brotherhood. It's guys working together to accomplish a goal, being there for one another, and it's all instilled by really the coaches. And the coaches give the team over to the players, and the players take that responsibility, and that's what makes it so special. And it's about coming together and playing together, and commitment and sacrifice, and playing the Geesman way.
Well, having worked with Penn football for 2 years before Chris came there, definitely was a major change when Chris Geesman came to town. And obviously Dr. Spiker was the main force behind that, because he just told Chris he wanted to have a winning program. And Chris thought he could do that at Penn. He said have good enrollment, and schedule seemed something they could manage. And so he brought in a little bit of a different philosophy. And the philosophy that I remember most was he brought in the idea of pride. And it became Penn Pride, and then it became Penn Pride statewide when we started going down to the state a number of times. And I think what that brought into the minds of our football players was it's not just a matter of putting on a Penn uniform, and obviously for the years before Chris came, there were a lot of good athletes and good kids, but they just weren't quite as successful as after Coach Geesman got to Penn. And I think it was him instilling, he and his staff instilling the fact that when you do things on the football field, you're not doing it for your coach, you're not doing it for your, for anything other than making Penn a better football team and making themselves better individuals. And I can remember as a freshman coach, I started a freshman t-shirt program where each year we would give a kid a t-shirt about Penn freshman football, but always on the back it said it's a matter of pride. So when we talked about doing things, the reason was because it's for your own pride and that you wanted to be better than maybe you were the day before. So I would say Chris brought in the fact that kids need to try to be better just because of their own pride.
I have a very unique perspective because I did not grow up as a PHM student. I moved into Penn High School my junior year from Chicago. I played at another high school called Glenbard East, which is in the western suburbs of Chicago, and its nickname was Drug Bar East. And although it had a football team, it wasn't a celebrated team. They didn't have a lot of the tradition. So moving into the Penn system as a junior and playing my junior and senior year for Chris and Donnie and Wally Yeoman and Dave Geyer, it was like night and day. And it was the first time that I'd ever seen Mohawks. It was the first time that I had guys that actually embraced the game. And there was a passion, zest, and zeal that I've never seen in my life there. And you want to talk about family. Right when I moved in, I had a bad case of tonsillitis. Dave Geyer, one of the legendary wrestling football coaches, took me under his wing and took me to a clinic. I didn't even have a doctor in the town at that moment, and he actually drove me to his own family physician. And right from then on, I was hooked into the Penn program.
So interesting, like you mentioned, I did not grow up a Penn kid. I did not grow up coming through the system. I grew up in southeast of Houston, in Texas, a football state. I was at a basketball school in a football state. And to tell you the truth, when Mom first came home, said we were moving, I wasn't very excited about it at first. And then we moved up, got settled in, started 2-a-days at Penn, and I realized really quick that I was exactly where I needed to be. I couldn't believe that I had lucked into a situation to be surrounded by people that loved football as much as I did. So after about 2 weeks of a little bit of homesick and whatnot, it just became second nature, and it didn't take long before I felt like that I did grow up there. As far as the Penn way, what's interesting to me about the Penn way is how we worked so hard every day. I mean, people don't realize how hard Penn football, how hard we work at it when we're there. Is there time off? Yeah, there's time off, but when we're there working, we are there working. Kids dedicated, high intensity, high effort. And the thing that was amazing about that is it didn't seem like work. It never seemed like work. It never seemed like work because there's no other place on earth we'd rather be. We were kind of at a unique period when I got there. The program had already been established. Matter of fact, it was funny, during those years, it was kind of, I think maybe my junior year, somebody came up with the saying, let the big dog eat. And that was kind of, hey, you've built this thing, now let's see where it can go. And that's kind of, it was established. People before us had done hard work. We were just, at that point, we were the caretakers.
You know, we were just taking care of it at the time because it had already been built. But the amazing thing was, it just seemed so effortless. We worked so hard, but it seemed so effortless because we genuinely wanted to be there.
Coach Chris Geesman's impact on the Penn community is so far-reaching that it'll make your head spin. The culture he created amongst his coaching staff is legendary. The term associate coach instead of assistant coach set the tone for what Chris expected of his coaching staff. Each associate coach was in complete charge of his position that he was assigned to. The coaches had complete control of personnel changes. Chris was demanding and fair, and his staff was immensely loyal to him. Amongst his peers and colleagues in the coaching fraternity, especially in the Indiana Football Coaches Association, he was highly regarded. He always took time to talk football and with whoever wanted to talk shop. Gees made it pretty clear to his athletes and to the media that individual stats were not important. What mattered most to him was the team. I asked Gees once, who were the top 10 players by position of all time? His thought was simple. They're all very special. When you talk to Chris about which was the best team of all time, he would say, let's start with the first 5 state championship teams, and then we can go from there. One thing was certain with Gees, he enjoyed coaching his sons Tim and Matt. Still to this day, that remains one of his greatest joys of coaching at Penn. Chris and his wife Jane still live just a few blocks away from Penn High School, and they're enjoying their retirement together and spending time with their grandchildren.
Well, people generally have feelings about what they expect me to talk about when I talk about my dad, but he's much more cerebral than most of the stereotypical football coaches you hear about. So when people ask me about my dad, my first thoughts are things like him hanging out with his cats at home and laying down in his underwear watching a movie with a bag of popcorn and things like that. So he's dad to me first and foremost, of course, but I think what I've always appreciated about him is that he is not just the stereotypical jock football coach. I always describe him as, I think he's somebody that would be a 5-time champion on Jeopardy given the chance. He's just well-read, he's well-spoken, he knows about everything in current events. So when we go home and talk, we talk about so many different things, and usually something about the Chicago Cubs, of course, but we end up talking about a lot of things. It's not just football all the time, and growing up, he never forced a football into my hand or my brother's hand, but of course, Tim and I were hooked at an early age, and you couldn't keep us away.
One of the things that I can remember from the years prior to Chris getting here to when Chris came was there was a much more, I guess you would say, funneled and focused effort on what we were going to do. And speaking of just basically offense, we were going to do few things, and we were going to do few things well. And I can remember them having conversations about anything that you notice that a kid does well, we need to celebrate that. And they did. A bunch of different offenses. I can't tell you what they all were because I was pretty young at the time, but in the previous years, but then when Chris got there, I mean, it was, this is what we're going to do, very few things, but we're going to do those really, really well. I think up to that point, one of the other things Chris installed was the 2-platoon system, which had not been in place, and that played a huge role. Number one, I think it got a lot more kids to come out and enjoy football, because now instead of just being 11 to 15, 16 guys that were going to be on the field, now you're guaranteed of having at least 22 guys on the field, and plus all the special teams. I think that was huge. So a lot more kids came out, for one thing.
I remember when I applied for the job, one school board member said, do you have a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan? I said, no. He said, you don't. I heard you're organized. He said, do you have any kind of plan? I said, yeah, my plan is we're going to win right now, this year. That's my plan. And that's kind of the way we went. And I remember the only thing that I got resistance on 2-platoon from the players, I remember Dennis Bonnick held up his hand at our first meeting and said, "You can't do that." And I said, "Why not?" He said, "It takes 22 players. You only got 5 here." He says, "Count Weston. He's not that good." That was his good buddy. And Weston was good. And the other one the coaches didn't like is I wanted to have a Saturday morning practice. And they said, "Oh, the kids won't come on Saturday." I said, "Well, they got to, because that's a big part of it. That's when you 2 platoon, that's a day when you get to work with your younger kids. You get a 2-day head start on treating injuries." So it was very, very important for us. But, that was those are probably the 2 main things that were different. And of course, we tried to run a discipline program.
Well, you know what? I can remember my dad coming home and talking to my mom about meeting Chris and big, young guy that has some different ideas, and he thinks we can go 2 platoon football. And my dad wasn't sure if we could actually pull it off. And to be honest with you, and he said, "But this guy is super organized, knows exactly what he wants to do, has everything in place, and we're going to run with it." And there's an excitement in the air. And then I can remember as a boy sitting up in the stands, when the guys ran on the field the first time, just the sheer excitement from the staff themselves. And I don't know if you ever look back at clips of those old days from 1973, every play at all, there may have been a 15-yard gain and someone came up and made a great tackle, our sideline, led by the coaches, would just explode. And it breathed excitement back into a program that was essentially dead at the time.
Not difficult to sell at all. I mean, I had to let the players know I love excitement, I love celebration. I said 2 things that go without saying are you don't want to taunt an opponent and you don't want to get a penalty. I said those go without saying. I said my only rule is when you want to celebrate, find a teammate to celebrate with. And they like that. And even down with the All-Stars, they wanted to know if last summer, they said, "Do we have high school rules on end zone celebrations?" Well, it made me feel good they asked the question, because I could tell they weren't intimidated too much by the MIC players that were talking about end zone celebrations. But I said, yes, there are. And I told a little anecdote about Lou Holtz and when he coached the spring game, and I told him that I wanted to see enthusiasm, but always with a teammate, and they carried that to an extreme. We had an interception. The other 10 players picked him up or carried him off the field, and the offense was running out trying to high-five him. And it was just, they realized when you go help somebody else celebrate their big play, they're going to come help you celebrate yours. The biggest mistake I ever made was in 1980 when I said the year of Concora, we played basically mostly seniors. 19, 20, and I just said it's going to be a rebuilding year, and I just thought, boy, is that not fair? That is not fair at all to anybody. And so I never used that term ever again after 1980. And the other term I never use is overachieve. Kids didn't like it. I got it from Jimmy Wainwright. He said, he was a great kid, and I said, he's an overachiever. And he says, I wish you wouldn't call me that. He said, I can play and I want a starting job. So I realized then, if you achieve, you're an achiever. You're not an overachiever. If you achieve, you're an achiever. And there's no such thing as building year. So, I mean, those are 2 things I believe. And, I learned them along the way. In the off season, I always said the same thing. People in the winter, they're going to say, how do you think we'll be next year? And I always said the same thing. We work so hard and our plan is so sound that we not only expect success, we deserve it. And that's just the way I felt about it, and I want the kids to feel that way.
I'm going to tell you this, to be honest with you. What we just talked about before, the Gold Rush and the Wild Bunch sticker, that was the thing that was cherished. It still is. And, if you're lucky enough to get one of those on your helmet, that's what everybody coveted. Well,
it was, I guess it started back around 70, I don't know where 70, I mean, it was just like we wanted to have some pride in our unit. And so the Wild Bunch, we put that on the front of your helmet. And we tell her, if you're going to wear a Wild Bunch sticker and go out there where they can see it, if you're not the Wild Bunch, they're going to laugh at you and make fun of you and point at that sticker. And I said, the Gold Rush, you got to put that on the back of your helmet. Because when you run by, I want some defender on his back, turn around, who was that? Masked man, and see the Gold Rush on the back of the helmet. So that's kind of the way they started it, where they were placed. But we had, we'd messed around with other nicknames before, but the ones that we finally decided on were probably back in the mid-'70s, and was Gold Rush and Wild Bunch. I like that. And it was Jim Belden in Carmel. This is a big school too. He said when they came up there in '95, first of all, and he told me this in the winter, he said, we were excited that Portage got beat. That's what we were nervous about. And we played the next day, and they didn't even come up to scout. And when they heard we won, they were very excited. So I was a little leery they didn't come up and scout. But he said their team outwardly was very confident all week. But he said they're talking just like a normal team coming up here. When they got on the Lincoln Way and saw Penn High School 1 mile, so things got kind of quiet, and you could hear them whispering. He said, when we got to the corner, Bittersweet and Jefferson, they saw Penn High School. He said there's not one sound made until they pulled on in. So I know it was a little bit intimidating. I know Charlie Adams told me that so many teams he saw were beaten just by coming into Freed Field. He said, they're just by looking around, they're beat. He said, you can tell it. And he told me, he said, they see that Penn on the helmets and they see Freed Field. He said, if you're playing the blind school, you try to fire. I said, the blind school especially, because they can't see the Penn on the side of the helmet, so you really got to be ready for them. But yeah, there's a special aura at Penn, and you know, we take it for granted. I mean, that it's going to be there, and it's always going to be there. But when you talk to opponents, how they hate to come out, that makes it.
Corey Yeoman was born to be a Kingsman. While everybody else was doing their thing, Corey Yeoman was doing Penn football. As a youngster, Corey would sit outside the coach's office and eavesdrop on the coaches' meetings. He ate it, drank it, and slept Penn football. Corey's parents, Marilyn and Wally, were all in, too, when it comes to Penn football. So when it was all said and done, Corey flourished in the environment he was in. Corey's brothers, Todd and Trent, also grew up to be great coaches, and their impact on Penn football should not go unnoticed. The Kingsmen have not missed a beat since Corey Yeoman took over the reins of the black and gold in the fall of 2003. Corey, in his first 15 seasons as a head coach, has an eye-popping 166 wins and only 32 setbacks, with 11 sectional championships, 9 regional titles, 4 trips to the state championship game. In addition, Corey and his staff have not missed a beat in winning 14 Northern Indiana Conference football titles in 16 seasons.
Chris would always say, he'd always used to laugh at guys that talk about, yeah, we're going to go back to fundamentals. And Chris says, you never have to go back to them if you never leave them. And then that was a big thing, just fun to be fundamentally sound in everything you did. How we run practice and the reasons why and what we did and how we taught, how we worked in the off season, how we worked and had coaches meetings, all those things, to be honest, that was the nice part. The staff, Chris had left and Dad had left, but we stayed the same, and everything else, offensively, defensively, special teams wise, continued. And it wasn't one of those deals, I'm going to change it. I think the stupidest thing in the world. I mean, the greatest high school coach that's ever coached did it this way. We're going to do it exactly the same way. I can remember Chris, the one thing he always wondered about, he said, Corey, what are you going to do offensively, defensively? Will you go to the offensive side of the ball, or will you stay on the defensive side of the ball? And this is before it's even named that I'm going to be the head coach. You know, what do you think you do? And I said, well, Chris, I think I'll just stay on the defensive side and work with Don like I've done for years and years, and Bear, and you know what I mean. And you know, we had to replace our secondary coach, Pete. We replaced him with Pete at the time, and later became John. And so we didn't try to reinvent the wheel and try to break away, because why break away? Let's do it the other way. And I'm constantly calling Gees and saying, hey, this is going on this, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Give me some suggestions. And whether it be how to prepare, what do you do in an open week, what do you do here, what do you do there? I've had this kid happen with this, how would you have responded to that? And just over and over again, and he was reaching out, like a dad would, like the former coach would, like my colleague would. All those things rolled into one, and was always there to help, but never once tried to tell me that this is exactly what I should do. And I think he took great pride in that. And again, I appreciated that, but I was constantly asking all the time what he thought I should do.
Well, one great thing when I came here, Dean Spiker was the superintendent. He made every coach in the system resign. And I got to meet every one of them and hire back the ones that I wanted to hire back. And, I found out then the coaches from 7th grade on up were hungry. They wanted to win. Everybody bought in. So that was not a problem. And then once we got everybody on the same page, they gave out a lot of authority and a lot of responsibility, and they liked that too. The thing that impressed me about Corey, when he took over the job, he was still Corey Yeoman. He didn't try to be me. He didn't try to be Lou Holmes. He was Corey Yeoman, and some people wondered, said, can you have that kind of jump up and down enthusiasm and still be the head coach? I said, yeah, you got to be yourself, and he was, and the record shows it's worked out tremendously for him.
Well, to be honest with you, Chris, that was Chris's thing, one of his biggest things when we were talking about the transition and leading up to it. He said probably the toughest thing when I stepped down, Corey, is naturally that Hall of Fame coaching staff. A lot of these guys are going to be retiring. Chuck retired, a year before, and Dad and Gees got out that very same year, and Donnie and Art weren't too long after that, 2 or 3, 4 years after that, stepped down as well. And he said the toughest thing you're going to have to do is hire staff. And he said, by far, that's probably the biggest job that any head coach has to do. So I feel very, very fortunate the guys we had. That's a great thing about coaching at Penn. We've had very little coaching turnover. Pete left when he went down, when Nicole was doing her residency, and then moved right back up when that was over. So we've been very, very fortunate. We've got a great staff that works extremely hard and loves it and is passionate. And I tell you what, it's a group of guys that loves to laugh at each other and laugh with each other, but they're very intense about the game of football as well.
The first thing I did as a head football, I'm going to tell you what, if you had talked to my dad before he passed away, this is kind of how things flew. My dad the way he spun the story, the first thing Corey did was fire me on the defensive staff. He told me, I had people walking up to me in public, look at me and staring me down, and I said, what's wrong? People I'd known my whole life. He said, I talked to your dad. He said the first thing Corey did was fire me as a head coach. Fire me as assistant coach. I said, oh my God, he retired after the last game. But again, he said laughing, you know what I mean? But that's part of the jabbing and the fun we would have at each other's expense, whether it was your dad or the guy next to you. It's a fun experience coaching there, and you better have thick skin because there's some kidney shots coming your way.
Absolutely. The way I kind of look at it is, my dad got me from being born to high school, and then he handed the reins over to Coach Corey when it came to football and sports. And and Coach Corey took over and got me to college. And when I was in college in the NFL, any problem I had or any question, I always look back to what those two men taught me. It's amazing. It was amazing to me when I got to Iowa, and I'd say Iowa recruits good, solid people, and some of my other teammates had no idea what, a 5 technique was, or, certain specifics that everybody at Penn knows, and I was just so thankful that Coach Corey, and my dad got me ready for college, and we joke about it. And when I was a high school player, I never thought about playing in college. My deal was, let's be the best Penn football player and have the best team we can have. Same thing in college. I wanted to be the best Iowa player I could be. I never thought about the NFL, and I took a lot of pride in that. I think it is very important to me to be in the moment and be the best player I can be right now, and kind of falling back on the lessons that my dad taught me growing up is work hard and do your job and everything will work out. Don't worry about all that other stuff, and it did. I mean, it's a great example of be the best Penn football defensive lineman you can be, and if something turns out, then it turns out. If it doesn't, then we'll just move on in life, everybody can have goals and dreams and all that stuff, but I really tried to be the best defensive lineman I could be at Penn. Not only that Coach Corey didn't rip my face off, but that I could, just hold my head up high. So,
Talk about Corey Yeoman, the football player.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the best we ever had there, and a tough kid. The only time I really had to get mad at him is we were playing Clay, and they came out they'd come out to the 50-yard line, and then they'd do the karaoke across the 50. Well, Corey and Kent Pietrowski and Merca, they noticed that they were on our side of the 50 by this much. So next thing you know, they're out there, and any time a Clay kid stepped on our side of the 50, they forearmed him. I said, Corey, we're going to start out again, 15-yard penalty. You can't be doing that. But I just like that. Had a lot of pride in the program, and you never had to worry about him being ready to play.
I got a little bit better story on that. I remember driving up to a game I used to ride with my dad. We only had one car in the truck, pickup truck on Fridays, riding in to get ready to go to the game. And man, he was all pumped up one day. And of course, rubbing his hands together down Blackberry, I had to grab across the wheel and hold onto the wheel and let all the hands do it. Started rubbing his hands together. So, but yeah, definitely that. It's just neat how his energy, all of us kids just loved it and just fed off of it.
The countless stories of the Wild Bunch, the Gold Rush, and those who have walked the long black line would best be served to hear it from those who have experienced it firsthand.
It's so hard to name a Penn moment. I still remember that Ben Davis game in the state championship. That was one of my favorite things that I look back on. The biggest thing I've got out of Penn football is the relationships, not only with the kids that I played with, the coaches that I played for, the coaches I coached with, the coaches I've coached against, the officials I've worked with, the fans, the parents of players. Just the relationships here are unbelievable.
The environment with my dad coaching, it really was a coach-player relationship. Obviously off the field, it was father-son. On the field, it was coach-player. It probably helped that he wasn't my exact position coach, but it really was, it was a professional relationship, and we both understood that. Really, I think for me, the big thing with my dad as a coach was growing up in the organization and understanding, going through the culture and seeing how the coaches worked and how much emphasis and how much work the players put into the program. Of course, it was especially fitting after we won our third state championship in my senior year. It was a little bit more of a double moment for that, being able to hug my dad afterwards. It was extremely bittersweet. At the time, it was complete euphoria. And this is everything for almost 18 years that I had grown up and dreamed about. And having done it the past 2 years, going into my senior year with 18 new starters at the start of the season, it seemed like it was a little far-fetched. But being able to walk off that field, to see my family come down from the stands one last time, it's incredible. It really was. And I'm thankful for the moment. And it was really hard to walk off that field knowing that I was never going to put that helmet on again. But we accomplished our goals.
So off the field, one night, Coach T. Garden's coming over from Memorial. Coach Sharp's coming over from Jimtown. I mean, these guys would get together and just, this is during football season. Well, they weren't over yet. I remember Matt and I were getting ready to go out, with our girlfriends or whatever, and we were hungry beforehand, so Mrs. Geesman comes down. Chris, I'm gonna order some food. Okay, I'll take pizza, large pizza, salad, 2-liter Coke. Matt looks at me and says, yeah, that sounds good. Coach Geese looks at us, boys, that's mine. You order for yourselves. So that was pretty comical. But my sophomore year, my funniest memory would be Scott Dreisbach was a quarterback. I mean, very talented, very talented. That team was a very talented team. And I'm starting to work my way into the rotation a little bit, wide receiver. Pretty nervous, a little scrawny, guy, getting a little bit of playing time at varsity level. And play didn't go so well. The play before, I'm getting ready, I'm going up to coach. He always would dream us wide receiver. If I have to look for you, it's not going to be good. Okay, so I'm next in line, and I'm close, but not too close. Well, there wasn't a very good play, the previous play, and coach he loses it. He throws the clipboard, turns around. I mean, probably the hardest I got hit my whole sophomore year. I go flying. And it's coach, and he's bumping me all over the field. So, but that was pretty comical. I still get razzed about getting knocked down by Coach Geesman in a game.
So. I'm going to tell you a story that's really funny, but this goes not even as a player. I'm going to go all the way back to Penn football camp, and we were out one day. It was one of the last days of camp, and I think I was in maybe 6th grade, and. The coaches out there, and Coach Geesman comes along, and the coach is teaching an arm shiver, the old arm shiver move. And I was up there, and so Geese comes in and he goes, okay, get on here, I'm going to show you how to do this. Now, if you've been teaching this kid right, he ought to be able to do this, that, and that. So let's see if you've been teaching him right. And so he goes, when he snaps the ball, you go ahead and give me an arm shiver. And so I'm standing, I'm like, oh God, what am I going to do? He snaps the ball, and all of a sudden, wham, I rise up, and man, I caught him just perfect, but a little bit low, if you know what I mean. And he goes, he kept a straight face, and he kept his air in his breath, and he goes, okay, you've been teaching him the right way. I see you can do it. He's doing a good job. And so that's always stuck with me, And I think that was a funny moment.
I think one of the funniest moments was it really had to be when we were playing Ben Davis. Ben Davis is always a great team, one of the top teams in the state and the country, always well coached. And we're playing at Penn, and I'm in the press box, and we're watching, and we're in a really tight game. And when the running back was inside the 5-yard line with nobody around him, and he just dropped the ball. And it was like, God loves Penn. Everybody was bursting into laughter. It's like, it was an amazing thing that you would just never expect to happen. And so, of course, we went on to win the game.
I tell you, one of the funniest things I ever saw, we're playing my junior year, so it'd be in '88. We come back at Fort Wayne North. We end up beating them. I mean, it's like 4 minutes left. We're down. Come back.
20-something points.
Yeah, come back and win. That was probably the best game ever to be a part of, player coach. I mean, it was just one of those games that you'll never forget. But the one thing that I'll never forget is, we're ankle deep in mud. I mean, that place was a hole, and everybody's getting excited. We're starting to come back. We'd had players sick, seniors sick. Geese comes running down asking, he's calling for one of the defensive coaches or something, and he comes down and slips and ends up on his back. And it's 5 feet in front of me. And we're like, he's gonna kill somebody. We're thinking that. And I'll never forget Tim Beeler is standing over him laughing, senior, laughing his butt off. Now here's an intense moment, and he is laughing, pointing, hey coach, you need help, just kind of doing one of those things. It was probably one of the funniest moments I've ever had. I didn't laugh because I was scared I'd get killed, but
But Tim Baylor just sat there and laughed and laughed and laughed at him, and he got up and he's typical Geese. He kept going and charging on, and we went on and continued to win the game. That was probably one of the funniest stories I've been in as a player.
Corey Ullman, I think that he gave me excuse me, that's he instilled in me, that I could have a chance to play. Corey Ullman, he instilled in me that I, had that opportunity. And, I say that today, in my journey, certainly Penn football is one of the most influential things in my life. I put my faith family, Penn football, and Wabash College.
Probably one of the happiest moments that I can remember is when we won in '95. And I just, the amount of time that was put in, and then after that game and back, after the game into the hotel room, and just the celebration with all the coaches, there was such joy, and there was such, just camaraderie there between those coaches, that they had done it again. Corey, that was the first time Corey had won one, and he'd been there for a while. He'd put so much passion and so much time into that. And for a lot of those other coaches that had been there for a long time, that it's like reaffirming that they had won again. So, and coming up so close in '89, that heartbreaker, and then getting there and getting those other times, and finally we did it again. And so after that game and after that, that was a special moment for me. And that was the first time as a coach that we'd won too in '95, except for when I was a player. So that was kind of a special moment as well.
It's really hard to put my finger on one thing. It was such a life-changing experience for me. It really was. I'll tell you one thing that stands out in my mind for some reason. It's just jumping out to me is the day I got my Gold Rush sticker. I remember coming home and just looking at my helmet, looking at that sticker on that helmet, saying, "It's your time. It's your time to represent this football team as a starter, as a leader, and you're not just part of the ride anymore. You can't just jump on and enjoy the ride anymore. You've got to be a part of this. You've got to be a part of shaping others, of influencing others, of being a leader." That was as defining moment as any.
I would say the defining moment was just being opportunistic enough to be in the class that I was in, with Corey Ullman, with Kevin Krieg, with Kent Pietrowski, with Brent Keller, Steve Susky, Doyle Weaver, Kenny Cotter. That was a special group of football players, and I think we won the first playoff game in Penn history, and we kind of set a benchmark for what was to come a couple of years later. I think that we, like I said, you couldn't find a better defensive football team, and offensively we weren't too bad either.
Well, I'll tell you one. I think it was probably my senior year, and it probably was a Thursday because we were coming off the game field, so it was probably a Thursday practice, and I'm walking along with Coach Geesman, and he goes, "Hinton, you don't downfield block, you're not getting a scholarship." And I kind of laughed to myself, and it must have been towards the end because I didn't get offered a scholarship till I think the season was over. So I went to the North-South All-Star game, and never caught a pass. But late in the game, Roy Thomas, who I think was from East Chicago, I went to Ball State. I knew him later. Broke a long one, and I went down and just killed a defensive back about 40 yards down the field, and Roy Thomas cut back and scored a touchdown. And I thought, this is fun, downfield blocking. and granted, he scored a touchdown because I blocked, but I killed the kid. So from then on, it was, and I still, every time I see Geesman, or when I see him, I forget to tell him that. But it was like, this is great. You can downfield block. Hopefully your back's going to cut off you and score a touchdown, and you can kill a defenseless DB.
Well, I had a son and a daughter who went through Penn. My daughter was a cheerleader, my son was a football player. So one of my favorite moments is after we beat Ben Davis in '96. My daughter was on the field as a cheerleader, my son was on the field as a player, and so I got that picture of the Ben Davis score that we came back to beat Ben Davis, and then my 2 children with me. I mean, that's definitely a highlight. Obviously, every one of the state championships is very special, and Chris and I were talking about that last week too, that you think about the games that we won and lost in the state, and almost every one of the games that we won, or all of the games that we won, someone on the team stepped up and said, we're not losing this game. Matt Geesman did it in '95, Nick Bayline did it in '96, Kevin Niccolini did it in '97, Eric Moore was a great leader, and fortunately they were good enough, I don't think they had to step up. They just played their game and beat a very good Center Grove team. '83, the same thing happened. Chris, you know, in the book it talks about Chris is in the locker room throwing up, and the whole time the offensive line coaches are saying, Coach, we got it. And so I do think that and part of that's just Chris, getting the players to believe in themselves. And like he said, you know, you can have good players, but you can't teach them to win state championships. Someone has to step up and do the job. And you know, so all the state championships are highlight games, but you know, all kinds of games that I could talk about that are good memories.
I hope you enjoyed a crowning achievement, the history of Penn football. For more information on our other project, Once a Brickie, Always a Brickie, or Slicer Baseball, and Cut Above, or our annual football magazine, the Indiana Football Digest, check out our work at www.indianafootballdigest.com or at www.rrsn.com. And don't forget to join the Regional Radio Sports Network for exciting Penn football every Friday on 91.1 FM The Globe. For all of us at the Regional Radio Sports Network and the entire team at Prime Time Publications, I am Paul Condon.